Today's article is called The Chicken and Rice Man, Part 1 of 2, by Adam B. Ellick from the New York Times. First, we're going to look at some vocabulary. Our first word is weary, which means very tired. Grueling also means very tired, but it's calling for an extreme effort. Demolition is the act of destroying. Shivering is an involuntary body response to temperature difference in the body, and desperately means in intense despair. Next we have volunteerism, which is the practice of offering your time and services to others without payment. Hearty means large and satisfying to the appetite. Motley is an unusual grouping of something, in this case people. Crusade is to lead or take in an energetic and organized campaign concerning a social, political, or religious issue. Bluntly means rudely or abruptly, without tact. Awkwardly is a clumsy or uncomfortable way. Stamina, the strength needed to keep going or overcome physical or mental strain. To disclose means to reveal or make known, and to jeopardize means to put at risk. Empathy is identification with and understanding of another's situation, feelings, and motives. And lastly, motivate is to provide with a reason for doing, to push on to some goal or course of action. Now I'm going to read through the article for you. The Chicken and Rice Man, Part 1 of 2, by Adam Ellick from the New York Times. You can eat here every day at 9:30, Jorge Munoz tells his day laborers he feeds. Every weekday, starting as early as 7 in the morning and continuing until 7 at night, weary-looking men dressed in threadbare jackets and worn running shoes gather at the corner of Roosevelt Avenue and 73rd Street in Jackson Heights, Queens, under the gloomy shadow of the L. Swiveling their heads as if watching a tennis match, the men scan each passing car in the hope that a driver will stop and offer up $100 in exchange for a 10-hour day of grueling labor on a construction or demolition project on Long Island. But offers of work are few these days, and competition for jobs is intense. As winter approaches, a man can easily spend the entire day shivering and desperately hungry, because these day laborers, many of them from Mexico or elsewhere in Latin America, are not only poor immigrants in need of work, many are also homeless or nearly. We come here to look for work, said a 47-year-old Ecuadorian named Carlos Suarez as he hugged a cheap leopard print comforter that serves as his bed. There is none. What can we do? Mr. Suarez says that he has sometimes gone days without eating and has on occasion survived only on bread. But for the past 3 months, he has eaten at least one hot meal a day, thanks to a former illegal immigrant who, with the help of his mother, has become a guardian angel for these workers. The man, Jorge Munoz, is an elfin 43-year-old who goes by the nickname Colombia, a reference to the country from which he emigrated 21 years ago. Every night around 9:30, he arrives at the intersection from his home in Woodhaven, driving a white pickup truck laden with enough home-cooked fare to feed the dozens of day laborers who congregate there. For many New Yorkers, Thanksgiving is a weekend to indulge in a brief stint of volunteerism at a church or soup kitchen. For Mr. Munoz, the holiday is just another night devoted to feeding his unofficial flock. Every single night Jorge is here, said one worker, his leathery face peering out from a hooded sweatshirt. Doesn't matter. Rain, thunderstorm, lightning. He'd do that from his goodwill, you know. He feeds everybody, make the stomach happy, the worker added. He's an angel. When Mr. Munoz's truck pulled in, several workers pressed their faces to the tinted windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of dinner. Hopping into the back of the truck, Mr. Munoz began untightening steaming containers filled with hot chocolate and foil-covered trays of homemade barbecued chicken. As the workers accepted styrofoam containers stuffed with hearty portions of chicken and rice, they thanked him as respectfully as if he were a parent. Never mind that the 5'2" Mr. Munoz, with his buzz cut and boyish grin, could pass for 20-something. God bless you, one burly worker said as he dug into his meal. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Mr. Munoz replied with a smile. You can eat here every day at 9:30. The relationship between Mr. Munoz and many of the men he feeds is personal. Uribe, you want more coffee? He asked as he saw a familiar face. Simon, do you want seconds on this pasta? In a way, Mr. Munoz seems to need these men as much as they need him. His unofficial meal program gives meaning and focus to his life. He is as eager to help his motley clientele as they are to be helped. I know these people are waiting for me, he said of the emotions that fuel his quixotic and perhaps obsessive crusade. And I worry about them. You have to see their smile, man. That's the way I get paid. Big Heart Special Tamales. The operation through which these workers have been fed without charge began 3 years ago and is financed mainly from the $600 a week Mr. Munoz earns driving a school bus. His life revolves almost entirely around preparing and serving the meals. All the cooking is done in the small house with gray vinyl siding where he lives with his 66-year-old mother, Doris Zapata, and his sister, Luz, who works for the Social Security Administration. He telephones home from the road a dozen times a day to plan the menus. He has few friends and no hobbies. I haven't seen a movie in 2 years, Mr. Munoz said one afternoon in his kitchen as he boiled milk for hot chocolate. But sometimes I listen to music when I'm driving. His sister described the situation more bluntly. He got no life, she said, looking awkwardly away from her brother as she stirred a boiling pot of lentils. But he got a big heart. He really does. Mr. Munoz also has stamina. Every morning he gets up at 4:45 to assess his inventory of food, which is made available in part with the help of friends and acquaintances. He doesn't have to go far. A mammoth freezer that occupies nearly half the dining room is stocked with cooked meats and vegetables that he collects twice a week from Colombian acquaintances who work in the food industry on Long Island, but whose names Mr. Munoz will not disclose so as not to jeopardize their jobs. The dining room table is laden with boxes of fresh but slightly wounded bagels and rolls donated weekly by Monteforte, an Italian bakery in Richmond Hill. From Tia Betty Mexican Bakery and Tortilleria in Woodhaven come bulging bags of sweetbreads. One day Jorge just came in and asked for extra food for his guys, said Tomas Gutierrez, owner of Tia Betty. Tortillas, breads. Last week we made special tamales for his guys. Mr. Munoz's porch is walled with bulk-sized bottles of ketchup and mayonnaise, and the living room is littered with the bounty from his weekly trips to Costco. 15 bags of spaghetti, 6 cans of tomato sauce, and boxes of plastic containers in front of the television. Mr. Munoz says he has not watched the television in more than a year. A family tortured journey. Although Ms. Zapata does not help deliver meals, she is an equal partner in her son's operation, and her involvement is born in part from her own experiences. For the first years of her marriage, the family lived in a small city in Colombia. In 1974, her husband was killed when a passing truck sent a rock sailing into his head as he sat on a curb outside the coffee distribution factory where he worked. Although her parents visited monthly, bringing food to feed Jorge and Luz, then 9 and 10, the help was not enough. In 1984, after a decade of struggle, Ms. Zapata left her children with her parents and began the journey that eventually would take her to Bushwick, Brooklyn, where she found work as a live-in nanny, earning $120 a week. Over the next 2 years, she saved enough to bring her children to the city. All 3 are now United States citizens, but the osteoporosis and arthritis that have twisted her hands and hunched her back forced her into retirement 7 years ago. All these experiences have given her particular empathy for the workers her son feeds. We were immigrants and we were illegal, Miss Zapata said one afternoon as she poured lemon juice into a bowl of rice. So I imagine that the workers may also be going around in fear, hiding from the police, hiding from immigration. Miss Zapata thinks she understands the feelings that motivate her son, whom she calls Georgie. He always had a good Samaritan side, she said, which was on display when he was just 7 and a man came by their house asking for food. Miss Zapata told the visitor they had none, but Jorge gave him his plate, she recalled. I said, Jorge, you have to eat for school. And he said, no, I'll just have bread. Thank you for listening.